Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wrecked by Art. This is Cindy Ingram. There is a moment in the video game Zelda Breath of the Wild, and if you've played it, you'll know exactly what I mean. It's when you walk into a dust storm. It's in the Gerudo area of the map, and the little map in your corner of your screen disappears. It gets all staticky. Your compass stops working and you can no longer rely on the map and the tools that you've acquired during the game. And you're in this dust storm. And as you're walking through the dust, if you listen carefully, your shrine sensor still beeps, the one that tells you a shrine is close. That's what you're looking for in Breath of the Wild. Then also, if you're paying attention, you're really having to rely on your senses. You're really having to rely on your intuition. And if you're paying attention, you'll find these sculptures of women who are holding swords. And those swords are pointing in a direction. So they just stand there, quiet. They don't flash, they don't beep, they don't glow. They're just there. And they suggest, hey, maybe you should walk that way. Quietly, very steadily, just like your intuition. And that's what today's episode is about. It is about what it means to be in the middle of a dust storm, in the middle of the fog, in the middle of a place when you have lost the map and all your usual tools stop working. And it's also about a painting that I saw a few years ago at the Minneapolis Institute of Art that mirrored this exact experience for me before I even knew that I was living it. So, welcome to Wrecked by Art. Today, we're going to be wrecked by a painting by Dorothea Tanning. And we are going to use another art form, which is video games, which you wouldn't expect to be considered an art form, but it absolutely is. We're going to be using two artworks, Dorothea Tanning's Tempest in Yellow and Zelda Breath of the Wild. And so our episode today is really about what it means to be in the unknown, to be in the creative process and not know what to do next, and to feel that anxiety of uncertainty and that anxiety of not having someone tell us what to do, but really having to focus on our internal knowing, which if you have been listening to me talk for the last many years, that to me is our most important thing that we need to learn is how to look within. Okay, so let me tell you about my first experience with this painting by Dorothea Tanning. This was in 2017 in October, and it was the first time that my business, art class curator, was successful. I had just quit my teaching job, and I had had my first real launch where it did well enough that I didn't need my income from teaching. And I knew that the time spent and energy spent on teaching would take away from the growth of Art Class Curator. So I had just quit my job. And I was at a conference. And so it was a conference called Art School Network. And it's a teachers and administrators of art schools, like arts magnets and things like that. And I thought, hey, I should go to this conference. I should promote Art Class Curator. They could buy my product. I could work with districts. It could really boost the business even more. And this period of my life, having my first real success, I started the business in 2014. It took 3 years to get to this point. It was very fulfilling, very exciting, very satisfying to finally see the success that I had been wanting and working so hard towards. Lesson for business owners, if you're listening, it takes time. 3 years it took to get to this point. I mean, I was making some money beforehand, but this was the first time where it was yes, I could live off of this. And at the time too, I was in a very ambitious state. I was working very hard for I had $1 million goal. And that's what the bro marketers and, all the business teachers online are telling you. You got a 10X, you got a 10X, you got to shoot for that 7-figure business. And I bought into that. So that's what I should want as someone running a business. I should want $1 million business. I should want to grow my team. I should want to build this big thing. And so I was working to build it. I was doing a great job at it. And I was, on my way there. I hadn't gotten my $1 million goal, but I was working my ass off to get there. I had a clear plan. I had a clear path. I knew exactly how to get there. And I knew what to do to get there. And all I had to do was do those steps. In my head, that's what I thought. So this was before I knew I was neurodivergent, before I knew I was ADHD, before I knew I was autistic, before I knew I was queer. This was like, I didn't know those things. I had done a lot of healing, but this part of me too hadn't even started my journey of like coaching. Like I had gotten through, in the last episode, I talked about the social anxiety. I talked about the shame. Like I had worked through a lot of that stuff. But there was a big part of me that was still stuffing down emotions, that still didn't really know who I was, that still felt like something was broken. And I was trying to fix it with achievement. I was trying to fix it with perfection. I was trying to fix it with being exceptional at running a business. And I'm going to create this thing, and everybody is going to see how successful I am. And that is going to fill the void that I felt, this thing that felt broken, that felt unfilled, that I didn't know how to fill. And so I'm at this conference, but, now knowing that I'm autistic, I mean, I knew I had a hard time like talking to people and like socializing in big groups. I can one-on-one, I'm great. Give me a group of 3, I'm having a great time. But like you give me more than that, I get really overwhelmed. And so I'm at this professional conference and I'm like, oh God, this is really hard. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go up to people. I feel really like, not good enough. I feel like I'm trying to explain my business, but I don't really know how to sell. And like, and all I could hear in myself was failure, failure, failure. You're not doing this right. You don't know how to do this. This is bad. You don't know how to, this is your, everything's gonna fail. Everything's gonna fail. You're fucking it up, And I always, when I go to those conferences, when I don't go to them anymore, because I realized, hey, those are not good for me. My mental health and my energy and all the things. I always go to an art museum because that is where I feel safe. That is where I always beeline to the closest art museum as soon as I can, because when I'm at an art museum, I am relaxed. I am peaceful. I'm in my place. I know I'm safe there. And it's funny because a lot of people don't feel that way, but I feel that way. My early career was art museums and art museum education. I've worked in many art museums in my early career. I feel really comfortable in them. I love looking at art, and I could spend all the time in the world looking at art, right? So that's where I feel good, and that's where I feel seen, and that's where I feel like I can slow down and just be. And I'm a fast doer and a fast thinker. And art museums allowed me to be in a place that I could just be. So I go to the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and I have never been there before. It's an amazing museum. I had a lot of beautiful experiences with the art there. There are these beautiful Buddhist bodhisattva sculptures and different things. But the painting that got me was Dorothea Tanning. I want us to call her Dorothea Lang so bad, the photographer, but like Dorothea Tanning. The painting was Tempest in Yellow. And when I arrived at that painting, I almost had like a panic attack. I had a visceral response. It was anxiety. It was confusion. It was like nausea. Like I could not look at it. I had to look away, but it was so shocking that my nervous system was like in alert, and then I couldn't look at it. So I'm going to describe the painting for you. I'm able to look at it now. This is actually the first time in my life that I have been able to look at it. That was, 2017, like 8 years ago. What is that? I don't know, math, 7, 8, 9, whatever. I can look at it now. And again, if you go to my show notes, you go to the Substack post, you'll be able to look at the artwork. Don't do it in your car while you're driving. But it is mostly yellow. It is reminiscent of Picasso's Cubist style. There's like this kind of fractured forms and things from different angles. There's faces in there. There's hands and arms doing different things, but you can't make out anything else. There's other colors in addition to the yellows, mainly oranges, reds, and blues. It's very like primary color, but like yellow is clearly like the thing. It is pretty big, 38 inches by 57 inches. So it's a pretty big painting. And yeah, I just couldn't look at it. When I look at a painting that I have an emotional reaction to, it's usually because I'm seeing something that is in me that wants to be seen, that is in me, it's mirroring something about my experience. And I usually can figure out what that is. I usually can find the meaning. I usually can see the message for me. And I spend a lot of time looking at it and really unpacking the emotions and feeling them and all of that stuff. But I could not do that with this one. It made me so uneasy. And I think it just mirrored something in me that I just didn't yet understand. And I'm shocked right now. I'm sitting here looking at the painting and I'm like, oh my God, I can actually look at it for the first time. But it's so confusing. And what my theory was that, okay, I like certainty. I like clarity. I like a plan. I like to work towards the plan. I like to know what's going on, and I like to be in control, because being in control is like one of the number one things I need in my life, that a lot of people need. But that feeling of like being in control of my emotions, being in control of my surroundings, being in control of everyone else's emotions, not healthy. I'm not saying this is healthy, but this is the place I was living in my state. I felt, if I could control everything, then nothing can go wrong because I am in control. And that's trauma response 100%. If you want the full story of like childhood trauma and all that, you could read my book, Art is About Being Whole. I told you about it last week. But so I'm in this like pre-burnout phase. So I go through a major burnout. It kind of started in 2019. It really started in 2021. COVID kind of put a wrench in the burnout, kind of gave me a little bit of boost of energy because of the business success that I had during COVID. But it was kind of like a steady decline to burnout, but I was not there yet. I was committed to my plan. I was focusing on making a difference through art, and I was focused on the mission of my organization and helping teachers and helping students and bringing art to the masses and all of that. But underneath it, it was all about achievement. It was about control. It was about proving myself. It was about appearing like I had it all together and I had everything under control and I am good and worthy. And, if you listen to last week's episode, I didn't feel good and worthy on the inside. And so I'm trying so hard to show you on the outside how good and worthy I am. And another thing that's really interesting about this time, actually, I probably hadn't done at this point, but I've done a lot of values exercises over the years. Started them, I think, 2018. So this was before I ever came up with a values list. But for a very long time, creativity was not on my list of values. I saw myself as smart. I saw myself as creative in a smart way, like a smart creative. But creativity wasn't the thing that it is for me today, the driving force that it is for me today. My creativity was channeled in other places. I was really outsourcing my creativity to other people, but also like listening to the bro marketers and the people teaching me what to do for online business. I was listening to them instead of myself, and it was all about achievement. It was about impact. It was about success. And it was proving. So there's a disconnect. There's this I'm a badass. I'm doing all this cool stuff in the world. And also, I feel like a fraud. I can't talk to people. I don't know why I can't talk to them. Why can't I talk to them? I came all the way here to talk to them, but I can't do it. It's like this, there's this back and forth and this back and forth. And then I'm faced with this painting that just completely wrecks me, and my anxiety just skyrocketed. And I know it's because I could not make sense of that painting. I still can't make sense. And I've always liked things to make sense. I want clarity. I want direction. I want structure. I like knowing what to do, and I like knowing what's happening. But this painting refused to allow me to find clarity, and it refused to give me structure. And I felt this anxiety that I didn't understand. And I wasn't ready to admit that there is something wrong here within me still. And maybe the answer isn't more proving, but this was before too that I learned how to sit with uncomfortable emotions. I have learned my whole life, really, to push down uncomfortable emotions, to override uncomfortable emotions, to keep moving, to dissociate, to suppress. And it was good emotions and it was bad emotions. It was all emotions down. They are not safe. They are going to impact other people. Emotions are going to make people uncomfortable. When people are uncomfortable, they will leave you. Like that's my drama, and you are responsible. By you, I mean me. I am responsible for controlling everybody else's emotions. And so I don't know how to feel my own, because I learned that they are not safe to feel. And it's not okay to feel them. And that's how I felt at this moment in time in 2017. I did not know how to feel emotions. I did not know that I had emotions that I needed to feel. They were so buried down deep. And when I would look at art, that's when I would feel them. And so I knew I had strong emotions. Like I cried at the drop of a hat back then. Like I don't cry much anymore because I really allow myself to feel the feelings when they come up, so they don't get to the point where they explode anymore, And so this painting confused me, but in a way it exposed me. It exposed something in me that I was not ready to see. So I looked at it and I left that painting. I did not spend any time with it. It would not give me the clarity that I wanted. It was foggy, it was chaotic, it was unreadable. It was the dust storm in Breath of the Wild, where you don't know where you're going. And if you don't follow the clues, you don't follow the beeping of the shrines, you don't follow the pointing of the swords, you're like completely lost. And eventually the dust storm calms down and you can see for a little bit, but then it always comes back up. And so you're like, you don't even know your way out of the dust storm. You're just gonna have to keep walking and eventually you'll get out of it. So I didn't know how to sit with these sort of feelings. So I was not willing to do that at that moment. And I learned with emotions, you stay productive, you stay smiling, you stay on task, and you keep pushing forward. And that's why it wrecked me. Not because it was dark, but because it really showed something in me that, it was honest, and I wasn't ready to be honest with myself. This was like the beginning of me not listening to myself. I had had the success, and it led to more and more listening to quote unquote experts rather than listening to my own intuition. And the thing is, that can feel like you have a lot of control. It can feel like, okay, I've got a plan. I know exactly what to do. This person's telling me what to do. But if you're a creative person, if you're an artist, if you are someone who feels like they have something to give the world, they have something to say, they have pain that they want to transmute, there's this feeling of being an artist that, if you're an artist, you know what that means, you know what that feels like, that you have this pull, you have this thing in you that is driving you forward in a way that you don't feel like you have a lot of control over. And so we grasp for control in order to make it feel safe and to relieve the fear of all of that. But success, when done by doing what everyone else says, is temporary. It's not sustainable. It's not maintainable. You might get the success that you're wanting in the short term, but in the long term, you might burn out. You might feel inauthentic. And then that tension between who you really are and who you're showing up as in the world starts to become unbearable. And then you can't, and it breaks you. And then you can't do it anymore. And then you have to follow who you truly are. And so when you do truly surrender to your creativity, you don't get a map. It looks like this Tempest in yellow. It looks like the dust storm in Zelda, where, you don't have control. You don't have clarity. You don't have often you don't even know what the destination is. And so when you surrender to your creativity, to your universe, you don't get that map. You just get fog. But you do get signals. If we look at Tempest in yellow, the painting, we see there's people, we see there's arms, we see, there are hints of things in the painting that we could follow down, and we could follow our curiosity through and follow our intuition through, and then we might get somewhere. In Zelda, in the dust storm, we get the women's sculptures with the swords pointing in the direction. Okay, like now you know which direction to walk in. You don't know what you're going to get after you walk in that direction, but at least okay, this is the right direction for right now. And then if you hear the beeping of the sensor, which tells you you're close to a shrine, you're like, oh, okay, I'm on the right track. This is it. You're getting this. It's like you're getting those little signs from the universe, but you only get to take one step at a time. You get instinct. You get the faint beep of something calling you, but you have to learn to listen closely to that inside of yourself, not somewhere else. You have a sense of knowing in yourself that you learn to listen to. And then, okay, you learn to listen to it, but then you have to learn to trust it. And that is work that is really hard and really deep and takes some time. So that's just really the work that I have been doing since 2017 when I saw this painting, is learning to listen within, learning to trust what I hear, and learning to believe it. And I used to believe that success came from control, but really creativity comes from surrender of control. So eventually, I told you at this point in my life, I'd had my first kind of big success, quit my job. You think, oh, that's good enough. No, I pushed harder. I pushed harder and I pushed harder and I pushed harder because I was like, hey, I see what's possible. I'm going to keep going. And eventually I burnt out. Eventually I realized that I wasn't listening to myself. Eventually I realized that I lost parts of myself that are key, my creativity, my writing, my looking at art and feeling it and interpreting it. Like all of those things had left me, and I was outsourcing them to everybody else. And I completely burned out. And with burnout, I felt completely unmoored. I felt lost. I felt directionless. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know where I was going. Someone would be like, well, if you look at your life in 5 years, what do you want it to be? And I didn't know. I had nothing. So letting go of that big dream brought both relief in that, okay, now I can really focus on what I want, even though I didn't know what it was, but it brought so much grief. because I didn't just lose the plan. I lost the control. I lost the version of myself who believed in the plan. I lost my sense of purpose. And there was a long season of really like quiet grief and very deep uncertainty. And I had to just stop and float for a while before anything new could emerge. And without that identity of like being smart and successful and whatever, like without that, I didn't know who I was. I knew that I was not enjoying my business anymore. I knew that despite the success, that something was wrong. I felt wrong in my body, like it did not feel right. I would just do work and I would just cry through it. I just felt so lost and so unsure. And so in this painting, now I'm like, oh, I know this painting now. I know what this feels like. And it was a season of deep not knowing, of not being able to see a future. I didn't know what to do because I've always been a controller, a fixer, a take charge person. Like someone at one of the schools I used to work at, she called me what did she call me? A go-getter gal or a take charge gal or something like that. Because like if I saw something that needed to be done, I would do it. If I saw a problem that needed to be fixed, I'd fix it. I'm really good in like in the aftermath of a storm, that painting is the storm. Like I'm good in the aftermath of the storm, and I'm not good in the storm. Like we had a storm hit our house in 2016, that like a hailstorm that like broke all our windows, and like we had to get new floors, like all this stuff. But it was like in the aftermath of that storm, I knew exactly what to do. I was like, oh, I got this. I can do this. Like, I just like take charge and I do things really quickly. And so I was in a moment, I'm like, okay, I don't know what is there. I don't know what's broken, so I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to live in uncertainty because we are taught in our world, in our lives, in our education systems, especially now that we have the internet, we are taught that the answers are all outside of ourselves. Our entire educational system is built on here are your expert answers. These are the things you need to know. And we're not taught how to find the answers within ourselves. We're not taught how to be in the uncertainty and how to survive the uncertainty. And so much of life is uncertainty. And one of the things that helped me most learn how to be in uncertainty was writing my book, because it wasn't something I could do in a day or an hour, or, I like couldn't just power through and write a book. I mean, maybe I could have, but it wouldn't have been a good book. Like anybody's like, hey, I wrote a book in 3 weeks. Here it is. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to read that book. That book's not going to be any good because you didn't reach in the depths of your soul and get that book out. Like you just like churned something out like without the depth. Because the book taught me the creative process is uncertain. It taught me the creative process was not linear. It taught me that the answers are not out there, that they're in me all along. And I realized, and that's kind of one of the main themes of the book, is me rediscovering my creativity, that I have always been creative, but I didn't really recognize it or believe it. Like I said, it wasn't on my list of values. It wasn't like a thing I thought about. But now I've learned like creativity is what has been my driver my whole life. I just didn't know because it was buried underneath all of that proving energy. And my shift didn't happen from fog and lostness and living in that state of uncertainty to finding certainty and finding clarity, because that's not what life is. The real shift came from gripping tightly to outcomes that I thought I had to have, to learning to trust that the outcomes that are going to happen are the right ones that are going to happen. And that if I trust myself, if I trust the universe, if I trust that my intuition is taking me to the right place, and I trust my own internal knowing, that that's how to navigate through the uncertainty. So that deep burnout, that deep place of uncertainty is where I reconnected with my creativity, not as an outcome of I'm going to be an artist. It was more of a not really a goal, but as a way of being and a way of moving through the world. I started to view my business and view my work as an art project rather than a thing to accomplish and achieve. And I learned how to be with the fog and be in the fog and be in the uncertainty, even when it's hard. I know how to be with it and be with the uncomfortable feelings and sit with them and listen to them and feel them and not panic about them, not white knuckle them, but just to listen and take the right next step. When that lady points the sword in that direction and she's inside of me pointing me where to go, I start going in that direction until I find the next lady who's pointing in a different direction. And then I follow that direction. But these are all metaphors of, things within myself. And these seasons of fog are so hard on the body, though. Like, I've been really going through the thick of over the last few years. Like, yet I had my burnout. I realized my neurodivergence. I realized my sexuality. I realized a lot of things that are, really life-shattering things to realize about. Not shattering. It's like what is it? It doesn't shatter your life, but it's a shedding of things that are not you, that you've been holding on to and gripping tightly. And so the lessons are now how to be gentle with yourself through the uncertainty, how to regulate your nervous system, how to make sure you rest, make sure you breathe, make sure you really honor the capacity that you have and understand the capacity that you have, because we're taught to push through. We're taught by school, by capitalism, by internet culture to follow the rubrics, use the strategies, use the roadmaps, use the blueprints. But real knowing doesn't come from those formulas. Real knowing comes from stillness and presence and inner resonance. And we're just handed this script for our lives that wasn't written for our wholeness. It was written to control us. It was written to, you follow this path, you go to school, you learn these things, you go to college, you learn these things, you get your career, you get your husband or wife, you get your children, you get your house, you get your retirement plan, you get your grandkids, you retire, you just follow the script that's written for your life. And as artists, as creatives, that script is not written for us. It's not written for our wholeness. It's not the script that we wrote for our lives. And stepping off of that path, of that script, and following what we know to be true, what we feel to be true, is terrifying. But it's freeing. And it's messy. But it's more real and it's more authentic. So me currently living through an upheaval of a stepping off the path, off the script. It's emotional. It's uncomfortable. And it's a deprogramming, really, of the things that were ingrained in me, by society, by the white supremacist, heteronormative, patriarchal, capitalist society that we live in. Because they don't want us to go off the script. They want to control. So the best thing that you can do, in my opinion, to be the creative, full, whole person that you are, is to question that script, to learn to listen, to learn to trust, to learn that life is not as linear as we're made to believe, and that we don't have a formula, but we can follow the beeping of our internal intuition. We can follow the sculptures, the feeling, and all of that. So that painting years ago, before I learned all of this, before I did all of this deep work on really learning to trust myself, if she were to see me now and know who I am now, her mind would be blown, because I am profoundly different than I was in 2017 when I first saw this painting. But that this painting has always been this mystery to me. Why can't I look at it? And I am like so delighted that I can look at it now and I can be okay with it. And I'm like, oh God, I want to go to Minneapolis. I can see this. It's not even on view right now, but I'm like, I didn't want to see it. I want to see how it makes me feel now. And I want to spend time with it. Because that's what's so amazing about art, is that it changes when we change. Like, well, it's the same, but we're different when we come back to it. If I were to go back to Girl Before a Mirror and stand in front of it, which is the painting I talked about last week, if I were to go back to it, it would be a different, profoundly different experience. I have the history with it, but like the emotions that it gives. And that's going to be a kind of a theme throughout this whole podcast of some of these artworks that I'm going to share about, these songs or musicals or whatever it is. Like each time I engage with them, I see something new and I experience something new. And that is really exciting. And so I can look at Tempest in Yellow by Dorothea Tanning, and I can see the storm and I can see the uncertainty. And I still can't make out what's going on. But I know like the storm hasn't passed. I don't have the map yet from the sandstorm in Breath of the Wild. But I have learned and am still learning to trust the tiny signals within myself. You know, the pointing sculptures, the beeping, the instinct. And I think that's what this painting was there to teach me, is that it's okay to not know. It's okay to not know. It's okay to not know what's next. It's okay to not have a 5-year plan. That space is sacred, and that you don't have to see the whole path to take the next step. And that sometimes that's the most alive thing that you can do, is just keep walking in the dust, eyes open, heart listening. That is it for today's episode of Wrecked by Art. And I will be back next week with another story of an artwork that has wrecked me. I've got another story coming from another person. So if you have a story where you were wrecked by art and what you learned from it, I would love to hear from you and perhaps have you on the podcast to tell your story. Please email me, cindy@artandself.com. All of that information will be in the show notes as well. And then, of course, you can subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player, or you can do it over on Substack if you want to get the emails about the episodes delivered to you on Fridays. And you can also follow me on TikTok and on Threads. Those are my 2 favorite social medias. And of course, I also have my brand new Patreon that you can join to get bonus content from the episodes and times to do co-working, times to talk about art together, and a community experience. So you can join me over on patreon.com/wreckedbyart. But of course, all of those links are in the show notes. So I will see you again next week for another episode of Wrecked by Art. Bye.